there, and welcome to episode 131 of the Childless Not by Choice podcast. My name is Civilla Morgan. My mission is to recognize and speak to the childless not by choice women and men around the world, reminding you, us, that we can live joyful, relevant, fulfilled, childless not by choice lives. Whether you have children or not, thank you for tuning in. It's my 6-year podcastiversary, you guys. July 2021 is 6 years that I've been doing this podcasting, and yes, I still love it, but more about that in just a moment. First, this. Today's episode is brought to you by Omio, O-M-I-O. Omio is a travel booking platform that makes planning a journey in Europe and North America effortless. Just enter your travel details and Omio will give you all of the train, bus, flight, and ferry options for your journey. It's never been simpler to book your first real vacation for 2021. And best of all, using Omio saves you time and money, and that's a win-win situation. Omio wants to help you leave your house this summer by offering 5% off your next booking. Just head to omio.com and use the code OMIO5, O-M-I-O, the number 5, at checkout. This is valid until July 31st for new users on all modes of transport. It's just the pick-me-up we all need in 2021. Omio. Plan, book, and love the journey. Terms and conditions apply. And there is a link in the show notes so that you can check out Omio and take a trip. If you use it, let me know. Tell me what you think. Well, 6 years. 6 years. I can't believe it. I mean, I say it almost every year, but I really cannot believe it. 6 years in podcaster land it's a bit of time. It's a bit of time. And I've been through the valley moments and the mountaintop moments. I've lost episodes. I've sat here in the middle of the night, like it literally is the middle of the night right now, as a matter of fact. It's 12:30 a.m. If you hear any bombs bursting in the air, background type noises, it is the 4th of July, or it was up until 30 minutes ago. So people are still setting off their celebrations. And so if you hear anything in the background, that's what that is. This is typically when I like to record, actually. To me, usually, it's the quietest time of the day. It was about this time when I lost an episode. I really needed that episode back. I lost it on Zoom, and I reached out to Zoom tech support, and the rep that helped me was in Australia. So it was like the next day, the middle of the day for him. And he's helping me find the episode. And we did end up finding it, but oh my goodness. I've had to redo episodes. I've had to ask interviewees. Well, not interviewees. It's not like I don't know what I'm doing, but I think over the last 6 years, I've had to ask for a redo twice. And it's, I'm sorry, but it's the most humbling thing a podcaster has to do is ask for a redo. And in each case, the interviewee was very kind and understanding. So I always appreciate that. I've got more gear now, so I'm hoping that that kind of thing doesn't happen anymore. I've purchased more things, toys to help me with podcasting. I've got more software that I use now. And of course, I have a podcast producer. I'm not doing this without a podcast producer. It would just make me crazy. So yes, I have more things now that help me along the way. I've literally cried tears over an episode, I can tell you, which I will not, but I know exactly what episode it was, where I literally sat on whatever video program we were using, myself and my podcast producer at that time, and the tears literally just came down my face. I didn't even realize they were coming. But he had told me that the episode had gotten messed up. It sounded horrible. And it sounded great while it was happening. But when we listened back, it sounded horrible. And he was like, Civilla, I don't think I can fix this. And he was good at what he did. So the tears just came. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. But yet, here I am 6 years later. And yes, I felt like just taking all of my podcasting gear and tossing it. Just tossing it and trying to find something else to take up my time. But the fact is, and we all know this, when you're called to do something, it's hard to ditch it. It really is. It's tough. You may think you can do it and you try, but you're miserable. Be honest. If you have a calling to something and you try to ditch it, tell me how it works out for you. It doesn't usually work. I don't know of anyone that's been able to ditch their calling and not be miserable. Bottom line. Anyway, I remember if you recall, some of you, if you're new listeners, you may not realize this, but I'm not a celebrity. I started this podcast, this platform from scratch. As a matter of fact, the podcast started about 6 months after I formed the platform. And so I started this whole thing from scratch. And in fact, there was a time when my total number of downloads for the month are what I get in a day now. And I was really happy about that. I was happy. I was like, how cool, people are listening. How cool is this? But now it's a day, 24-hour period. That number of people have already downloaded the podcast. I listened to several podcasts on podcasting, maybe 4. That's how I stay in the know and learn, because I'm always learning. And that's, again, another tip for somebody. You never become so knowledgeable that you don't need to continue learning about anything. And I am passionate about podcasting, as many of you know. I'm passionate about this medium because I get to reach out to people globally. And I try to do that every time I put out a new episode with great content. And it reaches the world. When I look at the map of where people are listening from, it's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. Places I didn't think I would reach. And maybe I couldn't any other way. And it's just a really cool experience to be podcasting. So I'm still loving it. But to know that the number of downloads I get now, they have me at the average, which is good. If you're at the average, because mind you, there are like, 1 million podcasts out there. And I have what is considered, when you look at the mean and the median, I'm right there in the average. Hey, that is pretty cool. And so more about that later, but all I can tell you is from scratch to this, not too shabby. Thank you all so much for tuning in every month, and thank you for sharing the episodes and telling people all about this podcast, the Childless Not by Choice podcast. Well, as time progressed, as I continued to do what I was doing, as you know, at one point for several of the last 6 years, I was creating 2 episodes per month, and then I had to stop doing that. But as time progressed, people listened and people actually reached out to me. I was hearing from people, and I still hear from people. I don't hear from people as often as I would like. Hint, hint, hint. But as time progressed and I kept doing what I was doing to the best of my ability, I started hearing from people. And I love feedback. I really do, because feedback helps you figure out where you are, where you want to be, and how to get there based on what people are saying to you. And so I'm always asking for feedback, and I'll still ask. A lot of times I've heard from people globally who just reached out on the childlessnotbychoice.net website, because there's a tab. If you go to the home page when you're on a laptop, it may look a little bit different on the tablet or on your smartphone. But if you're on your laptop and you're looking at the home page of the childlessnotbychoice.net website, on the left-hand side, if you scroll down a little, is an old-timey type telephone. It looks like it's ringing off the hook. And right below it is a link. And the link says send a voice message. If you click on that, you get 90 seconds to send a voice message. And I've literally had people click on it to continue their message, because 90 seconds is just not a whole lot of time. And I'm like, wow, this is awesome. They're taking the time to just continue to leave a message and leaving me their message. How cool is that? Thank you. So, speaking of people, though, and hearing from people, I want to take a moment to thank the people who make a financial contribution every month, my Patreon contributors. Be sure to visit the Patreon site regularly, as I will be placing more content in there just for you, and more on that a little bit later. But thank you to my patrons, Jordan Morgan, the Knights, Susie, Tiffany. Thank you all so much for your monthly contributions. It's truly appreciated. So, as I was saying, I love to hear from you. And in fact, while I was working on the content for this episode, I received an email from a new listener. She told me a story that brought memories rushing back into my brain. I mean, I think as human beings in 2021, I think we pretty much know we don't forget. We may put things in the back of our minds, and they may be traumatic things, unfortunately, or just things that maybe happened years ago that we just don't think about and we thought we forgot. But when she emailed me her story of what she was currently dealing with, it brought back all kinds of memories. I literally thought I had forgotten these stories, but wow. As childless not by choice women, many times we try to find ways to nurture. I mean, we were born to nurture, weren't we? Most of us, we have this nurturing gene. And as I read her email, I recalled how once I was asked to mentor two sisters. They were preteens, and the story was that their mother was MIA, missing in action. I believe we had the mentorship arrangement for a few months, maybe 2 or 3 months, until their mother came back on the scene. The end. That's pretty much how it ended. I felt heartsick, and honestly, I felt used. And I could have felt used maybe because of the way they just ended it. No thank you, no, we appreciate nothing. Just the end. And yeah, so I felt used. On another occasion, I was asked by a young woman's mentor to watch her baby while the two of them went to a local event. It was just a couple of hours, it was local, but when I took the baby back, as soon as I was called and asked to bring the baby back, the mother seemed like she was beside herself. And I could not figure out what was going on except to think that there was no real communication between this woman and the mentor, that's not good. That's not ever good. This same woman who asked me to watch the baby came by the house a few weeks later with a little boy about 5 or 6 years old. He had so much energy, he pretty much almost tore up the house. And then, they left. And then a couple days later, she calls me with this sense of urgency and asked me to babysit the little boy, saying she had to go out of town and she had no one else to watch him. But I had gotten a hip to her and I said, no, no, ma'am. I was pretty hard on myself. I was like, why did it take me these 3 events to see what was happening? To see that what comes naturally to most women was being used against me. I was hard on myself. Aren't we all hard on ourselves? But you know what I'm going to say next? Boundaries. Boundaries. And my saying no to her, that was me creating a boundary. And that's probably about the first time I started taking boundaries seriously and really checking out this thing called boundaries. But it's issues like these that make it important for us to create and maintain proper boundaries. I found this quote on Facebook recently. It says, "A lack of boundaries often invites a lack of respect." A lack of boundaries often invites a lack of respect. And that's by the musician Toby Mac. Well, his team, I would imagine. He's one of my favorite musicians of all time. I've got a top 5 list of my favorite musicians. He's one of them. And his team posts something on Facebook pretty much every day. But I was like, wow, this quote, this resonates. And, there is nothing wrong with wanting to nurture. There's nothing wrong with us. There's nothing wrong with the way we were created. But the key is to recognize these things about ourselves and then manage them accordingly. Because if we don't, others will. You've probably heard that people recognize things in us we do not recognize in ourselves, that we all have blind spots. And here's the thing. There is no shame in who we are, okay? No shame whatsoever. We just have to find the right way to be who we are, the right way to be who we are with dignity. We all deserve to have the ability to maintain our dignity. It was an honor to hear from this new listener as she detailed what was going on in her life. And listen, a couple days later, I received another email from someone who had just heard the podcast for the first time that day. Can I tell you guys that sometimes I suffer from total and absolute imposter syndrome? I'm like, people are actually reaching out to me and telling me that the podcast is helping them. And so this particular person who found the podcast that day wanted some more resources, so I directed them to the website, www.childlessnotbychoice.net. And there is a resource tab on there and a sub tab called a collaborator tab. And you know what? Let me talk about the collaborator tab for a moment. There are people who reach out to me sometimes and they want to guest blog or they want to collaborate in some way. And I usually check them out online. I vet everything before it's discussed on this podcast or documented on the platform, on the website. I vet. I try my very best to vet. Maybe something slips through, but it's not very often because I want quality content on this podcast and this platform at all times. I'm really serious about this. And so anyway, there are people who ask, and that's typically the answer is no. And there's one person, and I've been trying to find the email ever since, but there's one person who reached out and wanted me to put their content on the website. And I wish I could find that email. I should have responded right then and there, but I was probably in the middle of something. Because remember, everything that happens on this platform and this podcast, it's me. I don't have people. I don't have people doing this and that. The only people I have are a website manager, a nice gentleman who manages both of my websites, CivillaMorgan.com and childlessnotbychoice.net. And I have a podcast producer. I have admins and moderators on the Facebook group, but otherwise it's all me. So sometimes something may come across and I think I'll follow up on it later and it doesn't happen. So if you're out there and you're listening, if you want to send me the email again, that would be wonderful. I will keep trying to search for it. But the point of this is that if you want to collaborate in some way, reach out to me, let me know. I will tell you up front, there will be a fee for your content to exist on my website or my platform. I've got to charge a fee. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in just a few minutes. But reach out if you want to collaborate. And this person that emailed me who had just found the podcast that day, I could tell by the email that they were, dealing with some things and they were just happy to find the podcast and wanted more resources. And I was happy to direct them to the website where we have a resources tab. So be sure if you are interested in further resources to check out that tab. And I'm always updating the website. It's been a while before I've done anything really big, except something I'm about to talk to you about. But I'm always trying my very best to keep the content fresh. But, I am constantly speaking to different audiences. We're all childless, not by choice, pretty much, unless you have children and you're just interested in the content. And again, thank you for tuning in. But I still feel like there are audiences within the audience. And what I mean by that is there is a group of you who may not consider yourselves childless, not by choice quite yet. Maybe you just found out that you're not going to be able to have children naturally and you're not sure what to do. You may consider adoption or you may start the IVF process, but you did some research online and you came across this podcast, so you started listening, but you don't want to call yourself childless not by choice quite yet. Then there's the group that has been on this journey for a few years, and you may even just be coming into the acceptance phase. And you still have your moments, but you can generally make it through your day, week, or month without completely falling apart at the sight of a pregnant woman or a coworker bringing her new baby into the office. You can make it without falling apart. Then there's the group like me, like some of you who have been childless not by choice for many years. I mean, you still feel that little missing place in your heart, but you can move on with your day without thinking about it too much. And you seldom get triggered, but it can happen. And so I think, in my humble opinion, that you are definitely a leader in the childless not by choice space and can encourage other women in the community to realize that they will make it to a good place. So, I mean, that's what journey is all about, right? We're all on a journey and we find ourselves in different places on that journey. And no part of the journey is more or less important than the other. The key is to continue on, to push through, to become what we were put on this earth to do, and just keep on going. So I want to encourage you not to give up. And I said all of that because, as I said, that second email I got, I could just tell that this person was in a very difficult place at the time. And if you're listening now, I hope that things are better for you. I hope you were able to find the resources you needed. If you have more questions, feel free to send me an email or a message on social media. Email is fine, Civilla@CivillaMorgan.com. And I just want to encourage you that no matter where in the journey you are, keep pushing through and keep communitying with us. And I'm going to talk about community more in just a moment. So once again, I want to thank Omio for sponsoring this episode. Again, Omio is a travel booking platform that makes planning a journey in Europe and North America effortless. Just enter your travel details and Omio will give you all the train, bus, flight, and ferry options for your journey. It's never been simpler to book your first real vacation for 2021. And best of all, using Omio saves you time and money. And of course, that's a win-win situation. Omio wants to help you leave your house this summer by offering 5% off your next booking. Just head on over to omio.com and use the code OMIO5, OMIO 5, the number 5, at checkout. This discount is valid until July 31st for new users on all modes of transport. It's just the pick-me-up we need for 2021. The link is in the show notes. It's in the show notes for how to get set up on Omio, how to use the program. Just remember, terms and conditions apply, but do check out the link. It's here in the show notes. Thank you, Omio. So, changes, they are a-coming. First, back to Patreon for just a moment. Remember, if you are a patron, thank you. I have some surprises in store for you, though, because you are the ones who are helping the show financially on a monthly basis. And you went to patreon.com/childless not by choice to do so. And so if you are not yet a patron and you'd like to become one, there's actually a button on the upper right corner of the Patreon website, patreon.com/childless not by choice, that says become a subscriber. So just follow the steps to do that. Patrons, you are the first to know. In fact, when it comes to the community site, which I'm going to be talking about in just a minute, you were the first to know. You knew a few days ahead of time what was going on with the community site. And that's how it should be. If you're making a financial contribution to the platform, I think you should be the first to know. And I would also like to have more time with you directly through video. If I do anything live, I'll do that on the patron site as well. I just want to be able to get in contact and spend a little bit more time with my patrons, whether written, blog form, I've done that too. You got something written recently, or video. So do check out the patron site and make sure you haven't missed anything. And there's more coming your way. Thank you so much. I know things sound a little bit different because you've not heard an ad on here before. I had sponsors before, but you haven't heard an ad. And the fact is, I am searching for ways to monetize this platform, this podcast. According to a 2019 article from lifehacker.com, they say that 99% of podcasts make $0. And I put the link in the show notes. I don't call something nothing, but I guess what they're saying is that 1% of podcasters are making a living off of their podcast income, including being able to pay their podcasting fees. Well, I want to be very clear. I did not start this podcast to make money. People who create podcasts because they think there's money in it, just like the article says, they don't last. They pod fade. And that's what it's called in the podcasting industry. And pod fading is basically after about 7 to 10 episodes, the podcast disappears. They just can't do it anymore. And so 6 years in, I'm well past 7 to 10 episodes, so I don't plan on going anywhere. I mean, hey, life happens, but my plan is to continue on because I really want our demographic to get the recognition we deserve from other demographics, other humans, as well as ourselves, as well as each other. The fact is that for 99% of podcasters, podcasting is a hobby or a passion project. We're doing this because we love it. And if we get patrons in the meantime, that's wonderful, because myself, like most other podcasters, we're paying out of pocket for everything that needs to be done, whether it's paying the podcast producer or paying the podcast host where my podcast content sits and gets out to the world, or paying my website manager. They get paid every month regardless. And whatever I don't get from Patreon, it comes out of my pocket. The difference comes out of my pocket. So the fact is, I am going to be actively looking to find sponsors and to accept ads like the one you just heard on Omio. And that's how it is. I've got to monetize this podcast. Anyway, that's all we're going to say about money at this point. I don't want to belabor the point, but that's where things are. And, if you're listening to this podcast for the first time and this is your first episode, trust me, this is not how it always is. I don't dwell on these things, but this is a special episode because, well, it's my 6-year podcast anniversary. And there are some things that I want to say that I don't get to say in the usual course of an episode. Yes, I mention Patreon on every episode, but that's because I have people who are actually patrons and I want them to be recognized. But other than that, this episode is a little different because it's my podcast anniversary, and I want to let you know things that are going on, what's going on the platform and on the podcast. So thanks for your patience with that. Well, speaking of the community, as I mentioned before, many of you know by now that after months of thinking about this, I have decided to close out the community site that was situated on the website childlessnotbychoice.net. In fact, by the time you hear this episode, the site should already be gone, removed from the website, no sign of it. Before, when you went to the website, you saw a tab that said Enter Community, and that's how you got in, by logging in with your login ID and password. So that's all gone. I did email everyone who was a member of the community, and when I went through the list and saw how many people were members, I was like, wow, that's a lot of people. But when I went in there, I felt like I was walking around in an empty house. There was no connection between the amount of people that were signed up and what was going on inside that community platform. And so I want to make absolutely clear, and I think you guys know this about me, I love community. I believe community keeps us mentally and emotionally in tune with each other and with our journey. Community allows us to manage our loss in a healthy way. We've got to manage loss in a healthy way. And so until I decide what's next community-wise, I really do suggest that you join the Facebook group, one of them or both of them. There's Childless Not by Choice with Civilla Morgan, which is for women only who are childless not by choice. And then there is the supporters of the Childless Not by Choice with Civilla Morgan Facebook group. That group is for everybody. It's a much smaller group, but it's for men, women, whether you have children or not. It's for anyone who feel like they want to know what's going on the platform and they want to support us. And so then I have a couple of other Facebook pages. So, find what works for you. I also strongly suggest that you subscribe to the newsletter if you haven't already. I'm not one to overload you with email. I'm just going to tell you right now, you may get one a month. You will get one a month. But if you get a second message from me as a subscriber, it's because there's something I really need to get the word out on. I just cannot. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I cannot be in somebody's email inbox every couple of days. And that happens to me quite a bit. And it makes me nuts. I'm like, how is this what works? Is this how you get people to purchase your product? Maybe that's what it is. But I'm not that person. There's a shop tab on the website. If you'd like to buy some product, again, the proceeds go right back into the platform. I talk about that sometimes, not often enough apparently, because I'm not in your inbox that often. But hey, just go to the website and check it out. Do some research on the website or some digging around. Just check it out. If you have questions about any aspect of the website, let me know. Civilla@civillamorgan.com. But I just cannot send that many emails to my subscribers. So I'm saying all that to say this. Find out a way to stay in touch with me, whether through the social media. I'm on Instagram @JoyAndRelevance. I am on LinkedIn, Civilla Morgan, Civilla M. Morgan. I'm on Twitter @Civilla1. And of course, Facebook, several pages and groups on Facebook. So until I can figure out what to do community-wise, please make sure that you're somehow connected so that we can stay in touch, okay? If you have any questions about subscribing or anything, subscription is free to the newsletter. Just let me know. Now, stick with me for a few more minutes. I just want to share a couple more things with you. In June, I was happy to be a panelist on the Gateway Woman June webinar, Jody Day's Gateway Woman June webinar, celebrating the spinster. I know most of us are single. If we're single and never married, would shudder at the thought of being called or calling ourselves spinster. But, after that conversation on that webinar, I totally understand why the author, who that's who we were highlighting on the webinar, Donna Ward, whom, by the way, I interviewed in episode 126, link in the show notes. She explained why she used the word spinster. And it was like I had a light bulb moment. I'm like, she couldn't use any other word. She couldn't use single. And of course, I am personally going to continue to call myself single as my status. I'm not going to use spinster, but I get it now. I understand why she had to use the word spinster. So do listen to the webinar. I put the link in the show notes. It was awesome. It was great to be on there. There were 4 of us on there, and just listen. I think you'll enjoy it. Also in the show notes is a link to a study that Donna mentions in the webinar. Look, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm not trying to scare us, those of us who are single and childless, but we need to have a plan. And I just want you to think ahead. No matter where in the world you live, however retirement or aging is handled in your part of the world, do the best you can. See what you can do to get yourself ready. That's all I can say. That's all we can do. We can only give it a try and do the best we can. Moving right along, I'm happy to share the following with you. The founder of World Childless Week, Stephanie Joy Phillips, asked me to share the following. So tune in here. Check this out. Did you know that World Childless Week will be running for the 5th time this year from September 13th to the 19th? Each day has a different topic, such as Our Stories, Childlessness and Sexual Intimacy, Leaving a Legacy, Men Matter Too, Have You Considered Adoption, my favorite, We Are Worthy and Moving Forward. Those are some of the topics that will be covered. You have the freedom to express yourself in any medium you prefer during World Childless Week, from dancing to writing and everything in between. Stephanie Joy Phillips welcomes your submissions from now until August 29th. You do not have to be a professional, and you can choose to remain anonymous in your contribution. Stephanie says the most important thing to remember is the week is for us and about us. It's a way to share both our darkest secrets and happiest moments, and the Childless Not by Choice community deserves to be seen and to be heard. I agree. You can find full details of how to make a submission and learn about all of the other events running during World Childless Week by taking a look at worldchildlessweek.net. That's www.worldchildlessweek.net. I made contributions in the past. If you can, like she said, you don't have to be rich and famous, and you can do this anonymously. But do check out World Childless Week and see what you can contribute to the event. So, the survey. There is a survey link here in the show notes that I would like you to take the time to take the survey. Your responses to the survey questions will be read by me, myself, nobody else. I am serious about making this podcast better and better as time goes by. And you really don't get to 6 years without making changes and listening to suggestions. There are some suggestions that I've gotten from people that I cannot do it. but I do listen, and I listen to your reasoning and everything. I don't ignore people just because, it's not their podcast. I don't have that kind of attitude. I don't like that kind of attitude. I feel like people should be able to make their voices heard. Too many of us are silenced too often, and I don't like to be a silencer. I want to hear what you have to say. Whether or not I can do the thing or not is another thing, and I'll let you know point blank whether or not it can be done. But I want to hear from you, and the way I get to hear from you this time around is through the survey. Your responses will help me as I continue to make changes and updates on this podcast and this platform. So if you're with me, if you want to hear even better content as time goes by, please take the survey. The link is in the show notes. Granted, I've had some awesome guests. I don't know about you. I guess you think so too because you're listening, right? But we've had awesome guests, and I just want it to continue in that way. And so do what you can to take the time. It's a short survey. I did some research to figure out what questions to ask. That's who I am. I didn't just come up with some random questions. I did some actual research. I listened to 4 podcasts on podcasting. They're podcasts for podcasters, and I listen to them on a regular basis, and I got some ideas from some of them, and I went online and Googled survey questions. I literally did some research, so the questions were done based on that. Please take the time to take the survey. I will read them. You won't hurt my feelings. I just want to know what your thoughts are. So, last, not least, but is this last? Yeah, I think this is it. Wow. One more thing, you guys. One more thing. And by the way, I'm celebrating all month. And so you're going to see graphics from me that I post every week throughout the month of July. If you would like to say something, please do. I would love to hear from you, as I said earlier. Here's the thing. I would like even more eyes and ears on this podcast and on this platform. I would like you to rate and review this podcast. It's very easy to do. And I know if you listen to other podcasts, they ask you on every single episode to rate and review them. So I'm asking you now, because I don't typically ask you on every episode. Please rate and review. If you go to childlessnotbychoice.net, click on the podcast tab, and under each and every episode, you are given multiple ways to listen to the episode, and you're also asked to leave a review. You click on the Leave a Review tab. It's a clickable link, and you follow the steps. Even easier, if you listen on Apple Podcast, tap on the Library tab, tap on the Childless Not By Choice podcast, scroll down to the bottom, and there you will see ratings and review. As I look at it now, it looks like there are more people rating it because you can click from 1 through 5 stars and that's it. You're on your merry way. And some people do both. They rate and some actually leave a review. I would love it if you left a review because, hey, I don't know, maybe I'm vain. But if you only want to rate it, that's fine. Do one or both, rate and or review. I would really appreciate it. That's going to help get the podcast out there to more eyes and ears. If you listen on the Stitcher podcast player app, you can click the heart for a particular episode. If you listen on Overcast, you can click the star. So wherever you listen, look for a way to rate the podcast, if you can rate the entire podcast, or at least leave a star or something on an episode if it resonates with you, if it's really helped you out. Well, I think I'm finished. I'm so excited, you guys, to still be podcasting and to still love podcasting. Even during these crazy times, I'm really excited to not only be a part of this awesome community, this podcasting community, but I'm excited and honored that you are listening and that these episodes are making a positive difference in your life. That is awesome. Thanks for tuning in to my 6-year podcastiversary. See you in August. Bye.